We're going to open up a Donruss set right now. This is the 1985 complete Donruss set. And back in the day, Topps basically was the only card company in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. In the 80s, Fleer baseball cards, they didn't have baseball cards. They made football cards without players' names on it, but they put like a team picture on it. It would say Vikings running back scores touchdown and show like Chuck Foreman running into the end zone. But in 1981, both Donruss and Fleer wanted to get into the game, and they made cards in 81. And they both put gum in the cards. I did like the Fleer gum. Fleer gum was the best of all the gums in the packs. And then Donruss gum wasn't that great. But Topps sued and won. And then Fleer ended up putting stickers in their packs, and Donruss put these puzzles in. Every pack you'd get one of these, but they stuffed the box, and to do this here, this is the complete set. As you can see, they put them in packets of like 50, 55 cards, so you have to rip the packets open. And the cards are in great shape. 1985 has some big names in it, and let's go through all the names right now. Once again, I like to try to say every name the best I can. Like Bruce Burnett, that's Pete Rose. This is the year he broke the record, but he didn't have the record yet. And one thing is kind of weird about all the Topps or all the Donruss cards, a lot of the players look like they're sunburnt. A lot of reds in these cards. Bruce Brenny, Roy Smalley, former Twin. Joe Carter, Shane Raleigh. How about Joe Morgan with the Oakland A's? Mark Langston. Greg Luzinski. Terry Pendleton. Chris Vando. Wondering why these cards aren't in any random order here, it looks like. Dan Ford. It's just weird that Pete Rose is numbered 641, 625. Yeah, maybe they're in an order. Dan Ford, Mookie Wilson, Chili Davis. Kent DeColvey. Loved Kent DeColvey in his submarine style. And the hats. I love the Pirates hats like that. Willie E.T. McGee because of the neck. And there you're seeing a good picture of his big neck. And look at how red the jersey is. Kirk Gibson. Billy Sample. Phil Niekro, a little gray. At this time, Phil Niekro was 46. Still playing ball. Dennis Eckersley. Kirby Puckett. Yes. That is one of the nicest cards out there. A Kirby Puckett rookie card. 165 hits. He batted .296 as a rookie, and he had no home runs. Tommy Herr. He moved to the Twins after the Cardinals. Tom Seaver, great pitcher of a pitcher. Andre Hawk Dawson. Jack Morris from St. Paul. One of 4 Hall of Famers from St. Paul. Dave Winfield, Jack Morris, Paul Molitor, and Joe Mauer. Tony Fernandez, good defensive player. Tom Bernansky played in the 85 All-Star game for the Twins and played in the Home Run Derby. The first Home Run Derby was in 1985 at the Metrodome. Ron Gardenhire, Twins coach. So a lot of Twins references made so far. But there's Paul Molitor. Wow. Yeah, it's like twins. Look at this. Look at this. Herr, Morris, Bernansky, Gardenhire, and then there's Paul Molitor, Hall of Famer. Al Bunbury, Jeff Reardon won a World Series with the Twins as the closer in 87. Andy Van Slyke, I liked watching him play. Eric Davis. Eric the Red, one of my favorite players of all time. Wally Backman laying down a bunt. He played for Darryl Strawberry, played for the St. Paul Saints in the Northern League. Steve Lefty Carlton, he played for the Twins too. Jose Cruz, Tim Rock Raines, great stolen base. Great speed, stole a lot of bases. Willie Wilson laying down a bunt. There's Don Mattingly. Donnie Baseball. Raleigh Fingers, just saw him today in Oakland. The Twins played the Oakland A's. And they had a 50th anniversary of the Oakland A's, and Raleigh Fingers was there. And he signed an autographed ball for Miller, the nice closer, great closer for The A's. There's Roger Clemens rookie card right there. Nice looking picture of the pitcher. Craig Lefferts, Mike Scott, another fantastic. There's Pete Rose. Hojo, Howard Johnson, Gary Gaetti, one of the best defensive third basemen the Twins ever had. Jerry Koosman from Appleton, Minnesota. Here it says he was home. He lives in Chaska at that time. So one of my favorite sets right here is Bob Boone. Bert Blyleven, another Hall of Famer that played for the Twins. Fred Saberhagen, Frank Tanana, Ron Guidry, Carlton Fisk, Bill Madlock, Dwight Doc Gooden, Goose Gossage, Ricky Henderson, George Bell. I know what this is. I pulled out a lot of these guys for my Apple League. So you're going to see a lot of the better players first in this set. I think some of the cards are cards I liked. Fred Lynn, Bruce Suter, Bert Happy Hooten, Bob Stanley, great looking picture. Rodney Klein Carew, Bob Horner, Jesse Orozco, Kent Herbeck, homered in his very first game to win the game for the Twins at the Bronx. Dale Murphy, great player. Tony Gwynn, second-year card, I believe. Might be a third-year card. Mike Schmidt, fantastic. What a great picture. That's one of the nicest pictures in the whole set. Nolan Ryan, Wizard of Oz. Reggie Jackson, Buddy Bell, one of my favorite players of all time. George Brett, another one of my favorites. Dave Winfield from St. Paul. Eddie, Eat, Drink, and Be Murray, as Chris Berman would say on Sports Center. Shawn Dunston and Danny Tartable. And then now we'll go to the cards, how they're supposed to be. So those are some of the best cards in the set. So let's go and start with card number 1. Here's what we'll do. We'll do the stack here. We'll go 50 backwards to 1. It looks like I have to do some sorting. There's Jim Rice, Hall of Famer. Lance Parrish, great player. Robin Yount, Hall of Famer. And we get to the rookies of 1985. Doug Lohman, never heard of him. Jim Traber barely played. Steve Jeltz barely played. Alejandro Sanchez barely played. Russ Stevens, don't remember him. Billy Hatcher played for the Cubs a long time, or played the Major Leagues for a long time. Charlie Mitchell, never heard of him. Calvin Schiraldi played a long time for the Mets. Scott Bradley, a little experience. Larry Sheets played for a while. Scott Kiefer, a little bit. Never heard of Alfonso Polito. Darryl Boston, he played for a while. Johnny Morris, don't really remember him. I think he did play. Tony Brewer, don't remember him. Jeff Reed played a few games for the Twins. Steve Lyons, he played. Mike Bilecki pitched. And then we have Donruss did Diamond Kings. So he's supposed to be the Diamond Kings of every team. Here, let's see who they are. Bob Brenly, Tony Gwynn, Tony Pena, Juan Samuel, Jesse Orozco, Charlie Lee, Jose Cruz, Mario Soto, Alvin Davis, Frank Viola, Don Sutton, Jim Rice, Cal Ripken Jr., Joaquin Andujar, Mike Marshall, Clydell Washington, Willie Upshaw, Frank Tanana, Carney Lansford, who's the Twins? Don Mattingly, Dan Quisenberry, Lou Whitaker, Bert Blyleven, Rich Dotson, Doug DeCinces, and Ryan Samberg. Did the Twins have one? Yeah, it was Frank Viola. All right. So there's that, and we get a whole every one of the little packs in here, 55 cards, had a Lou Gehrig puzzle as well. So let's go to the second half of the set. Enos Cabell, Mike Witt, Don Sutton, Hall of Famer, Rich Dower, Milt Wilcox, decent pitcher, Jay Howell, Tony Bernazard, Tony Phillips, Bud Black, Curtis Wilkerson. We're looking at the 1985 Donruss set at Dave's Cards and Sports Games on YouTube and also Facebook Live. Danny Darwin, Bill Gullickson, like the Expo cap, Bill Caudill, Dan Quisenberry, great relief pitcher, submarine style, Julio Franco, Bill Russell, Willie Randolph, good second baseman, Chet Lemon. This is a nice looking card, one of my favorite cards right here. Jim Sundberg, Mike Flanagan, Tim Wallach, great third baseman for the Spos. Lamar Hoyt played in the All-Star game in 85. Billy Duran, Ricky Horton, Ozzie Virgil, Ron Oyster, Alan Wiggins. A lot of bunt shots they took this year. Joel Youngblood, Larry McWilliams, Jody Davis, Jack Perconte, Alfredo Griffin, Dave Engel. He played in the All-Star game one year. Willie Upshaw, Alvin Davis, good player for the Mariners. Keith Hernandez, Ryan Sandberg, Hall of Famer. Jack Clark, Tony Pena, Dave Parker, Harold Baines, Gary Carter, Dave Kingman, Fernando Valenzuela. A lot of good players there. What I do is I take all of these cards, and then I'm going to put them in sleeves. So here we go with another stack. Len Barker pitched a perfect game. John Franco played many games. Bill Campbell played for the Twins and the Red Sox. Jerry Davis, Phil Garner, good fielder. Mark Hill, Tommy Dunbar, Brian Downing, Joe Hesketh, Tim Conroy, Onyx Concepcion, Brooke Jacoby, Tom Niedenfuer from Minnesota. Doesn't say where he's born. I know he's from Minnesota. Don't know what town though. Brian Dayette, Oil Can Boy. How do you like that? They just call him Oil Can right on the card. His name is Dennis Boyd, but they call him the Oil Can because that's what his nickname was. Larry Herndon, Mark Brohard, Sammy Stewart, Dave Meyer. What did he do? Not much for the Twins. 238 batting average. But I love these cards. They're just great looking cards. One thing about, like I was saying earlier, every card is a red tint, though, on a lot of these players. They look like they're all sunburnt. Steve Henderson, Tim Stoddart. That's not a very good card. Greg Minton, pretty good. Rod Scurry, love the hat. Rafael Ramirez, Wayne Krenchicki, love that name. Kevin McReynolds, he was a good player. I liked watching him play. Dave LaPointe, Gary Maddox, Kevin Bass, Jerry Harrison, Bobby Jones, Terry Francona, coach for a long time. Larry Sorensen, Jorge Orta, as somebody says. It's George Orta is how we always said it. Ernie Macho Camacho, R.J. Reynolds, Marty Barrett, Bobby Meacham, Dave Rozema, Billy Schrader, good catcher, Gary Renicky, Vance Law, Nick Asaski, Ron Davis. Oh, my goodness, the Twins blew a lot of games with him as their closer, and he still ended up closing and getting about 85 saves. Look at that ERA, 4.55. Dennis Lamb, Darnell Coles, Keith Moreland, John Gibbons, Chuck Porter, Johnny Lamaster, Marvel Wynn, Dave Dravecki, unfortunate what happened to him, and John Denny. Not to be confused with Denny's. So here's the box here. I'm going to try to keep in the best shape as I can. Let's open up some more from over here. 2 stacks here. We'll do the stack first. Steve Rogers, Ray Burris, Larry Gura, nice player. Brett Butler, nice player. Rick Honeycutt was good. Mike Easter, the hitman, was good. Willie Hernandez, good closer. Deion James, Tippy Martinez, Bryn Smith, Mike Brown, Jerry Mumphrey, Neil Allen, Ivan DeJesus, David Concepcion, one of the greater fielders in the last 50 years. Eric Shaw, Jeff Robinson, Glenn Hubbard, Steve Trout. We're looking at the 1985 Donruss set. Hubie Brooks, Al Cowens, Jesse Barfield, Mickey Hatcher. He hit for 300 one year for the Twins. That was the year. Full season. He actually hit it again. But the year he went full season, 302. 61 runs scored, 69 RBIs, only 5 homers and 35 doubles. That's not bad. 5 triples. 0 steals. Was second on the Twins in hitting. I wonder who led the team in 84. Maybe it was Herbeck batted 300. Dave Stieb, one of the better pitchers of the 80s. Tim Tuffle once had like 11 or 12. He had a game. 13 total bases, 5 hit, 2 homer game versus Blue Jays. I remember that game. Kirby Puckett broke that record. Barry Bonnell, Leon Durham, Craig McMurdy, Bob Brenly, Johnny Ray, Mario Soto, Juan Samuel. That's a cool card. Joe Niekro, The Twins, he had an Emery board, got chucked out of a game in Anaheim. George Hendrick, Ron Kittle. He could hit the long ball. Let's see what he did. 35 homers, 32 homers, but the batting average dwindled to nothing at 214, and kind of his career died right then, too. Doug DeCinces, great third baseman. Pete O'Brien, powerful first baseman. Charlie Lee, good pitcher. Frank White, one of my favorite second basemen of all time. Pedro Guerrero also played for the St. Paul Saints in the Northern League. Don Baylor played for the Twins in the World Series in 87. Wade Boggs, one of the best hitters ever to play the game. Alan Trammell, Hall of Fame shortstop. Cecil Cooper. Cal Ripken, Hall of Famer. Tito Landrum, George Frazier, and Benny DiStefano. And we'll do the other stack. George Vukovic. Another Lou Gehrig. Dave Anderson. Rick Cerrone. Juan Berenguer. Twin World Series champ in 87. Peter Ladd. Ken Dixon. Houston Jimenez. He hit a ball at Fenway Park and it bounced off the wall. And from that day on, they called the little guy Harmon Jimenez. He was 5'8", 144, and there's no way he was 5'8". Smallest player in the majors. There's no way he was 5'8". He's like 5'5" or 5'6". Ernie Witt, hat crooked. One thing I like about this is, unlike Topps, you actually see the real hats they wore. Topps painted in a lot of the hats. Scott Sanderson, Gary LaValle, Don Robinson, Bruce Benedict, Jay Tibbs looking a little red, matching the jersey. Dave Rucker, Len Matusek, Britt Burns, George Wright, Don Assay, Bruce Bocce. He got played mostly for the Mariners. Danny Orge, Mike Jeffcoat, Candy Maldonado. Tony Armas could hit the long ball, and that's about it. Never had a good batting average. 233, 218. 279 wasn't bad with 35 homers and 109 RBIs. Ray Fontenot, Tom Tillman, John Lolo Lowenstein, Rudy Law, Dan Billardello, David Collins, I liked him, Jim Presley, Gary Matthews, Mike Fitzgerald, Rick Manning, John Rabb, John Tudor, decent pitcher, Craig Nettles, started with the Twins in the 70s. Frank DePino, Lonnie Smith, the GOAT in the 1991 World Series with the Atlanta Braves. The Twins faked him out. He should have gone to third base, but Greg Gagne and Tim Tuffle faked like the ball was coming in, or not Greg Gagne, Chuck Knobloch faked like the ball was coming in. Lonnie Smith stopped, and he didn't score. He only made it to third, then he didn't score. There's Jim Gantner, very underrated second baseman. Wayne Gross, Darrell Evans, he was decent. Jerry Royce, a nice pitcher. Steve Kemp, a home run hitter. Mike Davis and Ned Yost. There's another stack here. You are watching the 1985 Donruss set on Dave's Cards and Sports Games. Mel Hall, I liked watching him. Alejandro Pena, Dave Righetti, a good pitcher. Jackie Gutierrez. I forget how many good players there were in 1985. Dan Petrie, Ben Ogleby, a great player. He hit a ball about 490 feet at the Metrodome. The same day Herbeck hit one like 492. Rick Dempsey, there's the Lou Gehrig thing again. It's weird about the one thing about Ben Ogleby. You look at his home runs. I mean, 1 year 41, then 14, then 34, then 13. So what was up with that? Rick Dempsey, who liked rain delays, he would slide on the tarp and make the fans laugh. Scott Fletcher, Dick Schofield, Craig Reynolds, Von Hayes, Tim Lawler, Frank Williams, Jason Thompson, Brad Kominsk, Ron Say, played mostly with the Dodgers. Ken Phelps, Chris Berman on SportsCenter, when he would hit a home run, they'd say, "Good evening, Mr. Phelps." Louis Leal, Mike Smithson, one of the tallest pitchers in Major League history, 6'8". I think Bailey Ober on the Twins this year is 6'9". So the Twins like the tall pitchers. Damaso Garcia, John Butcher, and they had a picture of Mike Smithson standing next to Houston Jimenez. It was like a 1.5 difference. It was crazy. Lee Smith, Hall of Fame, I believe, closer. Clyde Washington, Randy Lurch, Jose De Leon, Steve Garvey should be in the Hall of Fame. Gary Redus, David Green, Rich Dotson, Jeff Zahn, former Twin, Larry Parrish, Mike Heath, Mike Marshall, That's a cool-looking pitcher. Dwight Evans should be in the Hall of Fame. Lou Whitaker should be in the Hall of Fame. Mike Boddicker, Glenn Brummer, Rich Bordy, Lee Tennell, Chris Chambliss, Ted Power, Joe LaFever, Mark Thurmond, Alan Ashby, Ron Reed, Mike Mason, Bobby Grich, good second baseman, Bob James, Mike Warren, and Greg Pryor. A little over halfway done of the 1985 Donruss sets on the Dave's Cards and Sports Games YouTube channel. Hope you're enjoying it. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'd like to see how many likes we get in some of these videos, see if you're watching. There's Steve Sachs, one of the better second basemen of the 80s. Butch Weiniger. He once said to the Twins, his rookie season, I'd play for free. And the Twins put a commercial out that year about Butch Weiniger, and it ended with Calvin Griffith. I love that kid, because Cal Griffin was a cheapskate. Billy Buckner, Red Sox, good player. Unfortunately, he's known for one thing. Ted Simmons, Scott McGregor, Dave Von Olin, Henry Cotto, Milton May, Rick Camp, Tom Hume, Greg Gross, Louis DeLeon, Mike Lacoste, Al Jones, Tom Henke, I liked him, he was a good closer. Rob Wilfong, he batted 300 one year for the Twins. Before this, I guess. He was a decent utility player for many teams. There's Razor Shines, one of the better names in the sub-80s. Tom Bergmeyer, former Twin. Just in case you didn't know, I live in Minnesota. That's why I know most of the stuff about the Twins. Charlie Liebrand, Mike Hargrove, human rain delay. When he would get in the batter's box, he would adjust each batting glove. He'd pull at the socks. He'd tug at the cup. He'd do everything, and then he'd get in the batter's box. He would have a lot of strikeouts, not even get in the batter's box with today's games where you have to be ready, I think, in 8 seconds. And the pitcher has 8 seconds. Bob Baylor, Clay Christensen, Steve Crawford, Marty Castillo, Bob Gibson, not the other Bob Gibson. This is the other Bob Gibson. Bill Swaggerty, Ron Washington, currently he's coaching still. He's coaching the Anaheim Angels. Al Chambers, Thad Bosley, Bill Lasky, Lee Mazzilli, Rick Mahler, Dave Van Gorder, Bobby Brown. Believe that's the same one that was the commissioner of the National League. Kurt Kepshire, Tim Corcoran, Vern Rule, Floyd Bannister, Wayne Tollison, Bruce Keeson. We're looking at the 1985 Donruss set. Donnie Hill, Danny Jackson, Neil Heaton, Bob Welch, Bob Ojeda, Bob Shirley, Doug Bear, Ricky Waits, Mike Young, Greg Walker, Brad Golden, Carthy Orge, Bob Kearney, like that Mariner hat, helmet, Larry Boa, great shortstop. Jeff Leonard could hit the long ball. Here's a name I like, Cecilio Guante from the Pirates. Gary Templeton, Charlie Hudson, Bill Dolly, Daryl Porter, Louis Sanchez, Charlie Moore, Aurelio Lopez, Franklin Stubbs, Ken Griffey Sr., Jerry Willard, Carney Lansford, Mark Gubaza, Dave Stewart. This guy here is the only pitcher I really remember in my lifetime that would just get rocked in the first inning, like give up 5 runs. Stay in the game and he'd go 8 innings and he'd still give up just the 5 runs. Really, it was fantastic. He would give the teams innings every game he pitched. Gary Ward played in the All-Star game for the Twins. David Palmer, Keith Atherton also played for the Twins in the World Series. Pat Sheridan. Don't know why I have 3 cards. All right. This is the last stack in the box. We have the stack back here. We're doing a pretty quick video. How about that name? Skeeter Barnes. Gotta like that name. Sixto Lascano, Andy Hawkins. Danny Walling, he was a decent player. Juan Agosto. Odell Jones, Kurt Kaufman, Angel Salazar, Kurt Young. I think was he Rookie of the Year? His rookie season, he was 9-4. He was a decent rookie anyway. Ewell Washington, Steve Yeager, Dennis Rasmussen, Rick Miller, Rusty Kuntz, Ed Romero, Denny Martinez, Len Whitehouse, Cliff Johnson, Ed Vandenberg. I just love these cards. Bobby Dernier, Atlee Hammaker, Lee Lacey, Pascual Perez, Bob Ochinko, Bruce Bocci, Ralph Citarella, Louis Ageo, Jim Pankovitz, Mike Squires, Marvis Foley, Gary Pettis, he was a decent outfielder, Gary Lucas, Steve McCaddy, good pitcher for the A's, Don Slott, Mike Fischlin. Kenny Landreau. He was traded for Rod Carew. He was in the trade for Rod Carew. And I forgot there was one other guy that there's 2 All-Star game appearances made in that trade. He was one of them. He played in 1 All-Star game for the Twins. He had like a 30-game hitting streak, one of the longest in American League history. Bruce Hurst, Jose Rio, Scott Earl, Mike Caldwell, Tom Wimpy, Pachorik, Jeff Russell. He was a good closer. Ken Schramm, not a bad pitcher for the Twins. Rance Mullinick, Edwin Nunez, David Owen, Bobby Clark. Not the Bobby Clark of the 70s that played in the NHL for the Flyers. Carmelo Martinez, Kevin Gross, Bob Nepper, Doug Corbett. He was the Twins All-Star in 1981. Moose Haas, John Shelby, Sid Bream, Rex Hudler, Andre Thunder Thornton. Loved watching him play. He could hit the long ball. How many long balls did he hit? 33, 32. Then he went down to 17 with about the same amount at bats. Billy Kruger, John Wathen, good catcher. Mickey Rivers, Doug Flynn, Chris Cottarelli, Carol Motley, Pat Tabler, Mike Shostak, Richie Gedman, Barbaro Garbe, Jamie Kokenauer, Storm Davis, Miguel Delaunay, Julio Cruz, Rick Romanek, Mark Bailey, Joaquin Andujar, Rick Shue, Cesar Cedeno, one of his later cards. Yeah, he must have had 2,000 hits. Good for him. I liked him when he was with the Astros. Ed Whitson, Dusty Baker, legend coach. He should be a Hall of Famer just for his coaching. Dale Berra, Gerald Perry, Doug Sisk, Mike Moore wearing the cool Mariner jacket, Jim Clancy, Lloyd Mosby, good bomber, Frank Viola, sweet music, Spike Owen, Ron Darling, good pitcher, Rick Sutcliffe, a good pitcher, Ken Oberkfell, Manny Trio, great second baseman, John Candelaria was a decent pitcher, Terry Kennedy was a good catcher, Eddie Milner, Al Holland, Terry Poole, Tommy John. You know you're good when the name of surgery after you. Charlie Huff, Dwayne Murphy, Steve Balboni. Once again, this is one of the early cards for him. Terrible batting average. It was feast or famine, kind of like Rob Deere. Home run or bust. Carmen Castillo, Billy Ullman, Hal McRae. Boy, he batted well. He had a lot of 300 hitting seasons, average 293 at this point of his career, and he only needed 70 more hits to hit 2,000. I'm sure he did that. Jeff Kunkel, Dave Schmidt, Jim Mulford, Mark Huseman, Tom Waddell. Look at how red. Every player has a red tint to it pretty much. Earl Hershiser is a great pitcher. John Montefusco, the Count, Montefusco. Ed Jurek, Johnny Grubb, Roy Howell, Floyd Rayford. I think they called him Sugar Bear. Randy St. Clair, Joel Skinner, Juan Beniquez, Joe Sambito, Danny Cox. He was a 20-game winner, I believe. Must have been after this. Larry Anderson, Tom Foley, Louis Salazar, Dan Gladden. Won 2 World Series with the Twins. And one of these early years, look at that, he batted .351 in half a season. 4 home runs, not too much there, but he stole 31 bases in a half a season. That was a great half a season for the Giants. Brian Harper played for the Twins, won a World Series. Alex Trevino, Richie Hebner, Sid Fernandez, Mike Stanton, Doyle Alexander, Rick Lysander, Jimmy Key, Darrell Brown, Danny Heap, Gary Woods, Jeff Dedman, Mark Davis, Rick Roden, Tim Flannery, Frank Pastore, Johnny Walkenfuss, Dave Smith, Mark Salas played with the Twins in a World Series, the first one, I believe. Jim Slayton, Donnie Scott, Dan Schatzeder also played for the Twins in that World Series in '87. Jeff Burrows, Joe Beckwith, Terry Whitfield, Mike Pagliarulo. I think he played for the Twins in the '91 World Series. Mark Clear, Dave Bergman, Bob McClure, Vic Rodriguez, Warren Brewster, Jim Morrison, Randy Johnson. Last stack. Lou Gehrig. Then we got the checklist cards. Then you have Steve Farr, Tim Laudner, One of the best 3-0 hitters I've ever seen. The guy would have like a batting average of like 200. Look at the bad batting averages. 185, 206. But when the count was 3-0 on him, they give him the green light and he'd hit a home run almost every time. Don't get this card. 2 for the title, Winfield and Mattingly. Donnie Moore, Don Robinson, John Russell, Kurt Bavacqua. He won the chewing gum championship in 1972. So he's played for many years at this point. He probably played in, it could have been close to 1,000 games. But he was a chewing gum champion in 72, 73, somewhere in there. Andy McGaffigan, Tim Hullett, Daryl Milner, Jerry Narin, Wade Roden, Mike Jones, Don Schultze, Herman Rivera, Dan Pasqua, Reed Nichols. Last stack, Tom Browning. I believe he pitched a no-hitter. Randy Bush won a World Series for the Twins. Jim Gott, Phil Bradley, Mike Krutko, Vic Mata, Steve Bedrosian, Joe Price, Calvin Chapman, Jeff Stone, Ed Lynch, Bill Stein, Daryl Sconiers, Dan Dreesen, Chuck Rainey. Unfortunately, you won't see the Oakland A's logo anymore on cards. That's sad. Love the A's. Ray Knight, Gene Nelson, Al Nipper. I think he's from Iowa. Joe Cowley, Rupert Jones, Roy Smith, Rafael Santana. We're closing in on the last few cards of the 1985 Donruss set on Dave's Cards and Sports Games. Dwayne Walker, Pete Filson, Roy Lee Jackson, Salome Barojas, Davey Lopes, great player, George Foster, a big-time home run hitter. Even then, he was hitting 24 home runs. He had 1,700 hits and 313 homers. Good player. Mike Armstrong, Mark Grant, Danny Gonzalez, Al Oliver, A.O. for the Royals. And then he was traded to the Rangers, Expos, Giants, and Phillies. Walt Terrell, Tom Nieto, Willie Lozato, Joe Nolan, Tom Brookins, Ken Howell, and the last card, Omar Moreno. This is the 1985 Donruss Complete Set. And once again, you get every little packet with 50 when you buy the factory set. Like this is a factory set. Comes with Lou Gehrig on the top and the cards behind it. So that's how many Lou Gehrigs there were. And once again, in case you missed it, some of the best cards in the set were in here. You had Pete Rose. These are some of my favorites again. And then we had there's Kirby Puckett, rookie card. Then you also had, I believe Roger Clemens is right in here somewhere. Where's Roger Clemens? Right there. So Roger Clemens rookie, Kirby Puckett rookie in the 1985 set. And there's a Pete Rose Reds card. Hope you enjoyed it. The 1985 Donruss set. Have a good day.